few years ago, I had what I guess you would call a spiritual awakening. It wasn't an aha moment. It wasn't a mystical experience that suddenly transformed me. It was more like a slow waking up, likely due to getting older, um, as well as exposure to new material in graduate school. And this awakening was enhanced by a tragedy of such a great impact on me that I was forced to implement it um, in order to stay sane. And I suspect some of you understand what I'm talking about and have had the same experience. At that point in my life, I began to realize that psychological freedom resided in an understanding of one's place in the universe. If you have a sense that you are a manifestation of a greater thing, and you understand, you have a sense of what that greater thing is, you can somehow understand and bear the suffering of day-to-day existence. In other words, if you can get to the bottom of reality, then you are granted a great gift. It's a tool to put the cares of the material world into perspective. I think the best Western word to describe that bottom of experience, at least in the context of this project, is metaphysics. So the reason I think Pirsig's philosophy has resonated with me to such a degree is that it is a metaphysics, and certainly he describes it that way, the metaphysics of quality. I don't understand metaphysics in an academic way, but I have a felt sense of what it is, and I believe that what it is, and using this word helps explain what makes Pirsig so important to me and why I feel compelled to study him, and why I think understanding him or studying him is useful right now when things are changing so rapidly and we don't really know what's going on. So the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy has a long entry on metaphysics, which indicates that there's an old way of understanding it, the medieval way, and then the contemporary way. And I don't know when the transition was, maybe with Descartes. You can correct me on that one. Anyway, the medieval way, the old way, lists these three elements for what metaphysics was meant to describe. Being as such, the first causes of things, and that which does not change. So I guess for my purposes, I'm using this medieval definition of metaphysics, and especially the third element, that which does not change. So one person who was instrumental in my spiritual development has been Alan Watts, because he often has described in his lectures a unifying factor to the three areas of Eastern philosophy that he typically talks about, and those are Zen Buddhism, Vedanta, and Taoism. And I guess that factor can be described as an understanding that we are an expression of the universe, or you are that, or tat tvam asi. That to be enlightened is to experience the substrate of being. Tat tvam asi is a metaphysics. In Western philosophy, the writers and professors and philosophers that interest me and compel me the most are those who have a worldview that describes the totality of experience. Within those worldviews is a sense of what's always there, despite the constant change of history and various disciplines. So in Lila, in chapter 6, Pirsig has this quote that I think sort of describes what I'm trying to say. Quality on which there is complete agreement is a universal source of things. The objects about what people disagree are merely transitory. So that's an interesting statement in these times, which are so divided. You know, what is the agreement? What is the metaphysical agreement, the universal source of things that we can all agree on? Underneath this disagreement we're having about transitory objects. I think this is why also I was so interested in Jordan Peterson's Maps of Meaning. I spent a couple of years really interested in that. His theory is based on the dynamics of the constituent elements of experience, the imagistic representations of things that always remain the same, and how these elements map onto a variety of disciplines, and how those disciplines, if you layer them, yield this map that is a universal understanding of experience. And it begins with the totality of human experience from the emergence of consciousness. And in reading Lila, there's a lot of overlap, but that's a broad topic which I've only begun to notice, and I'll certainly touch on later. So another Western philosopher who, like Pirsig, is very influenced by the East and who probably is just as much of a genius as Pirsig is Ken Wilber. And his theory is an attempt to describe the nature of human progress, and in so doing proposes a metaphysical understanding of the evolution of consciousness. And in the scientific realm, chaos theory, specifically the book by James Gleick, if I'm pronouncing it right, chaos theory seems to have identified the eternal pattern of being in a scientific way. So when you read that book, you get the sense it's almost a perfect description of Tao. The pattern of chaos is represented in the fractal image. So the fractals are the same no matter how small and how large. It's a guiding principle. It's a representation of a guiding principle that's always there, no matter how small what you're looking at or how large you're looking at. It goes all the way down and all the way up. So you see the point I'm making, that the writers who have a complete worldview, which maybe it's crude, I've defined it crudely as metaphysical understanding of reality. They seem to be the most interesting. So I don't know what you think about that. I'd be interested if you share my viewpoint, and if you have some writers that you like that are like this. And I know that there have been great philosophers who have developed a metaphysical way of understanding reality, experience, etc. Kant, Hegel, Heidegger. I'm a layperson. I'm not there yet. I just have a very perfunctory understanding of these guys, and partly through Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, because you kind of have to learn about them to understand what that book's about. Another topic I want to talk about briefly, which may be helpful to you if you're a writer. So as a writer, my biggest weakness is organizing ideas. I tend to fill up notebooks with a bunch of ideas and then try to organize them on the page. But this doesn't, there's something missing. And so what Pirsig reveals in Lila is that all his notes were on 4x6 pieces of paper, and then he would continually reorganize these. Over the course of 4 years of researching Lila, he accumulated over 11,000 of these pieces of paper, and he would constantly reorganize them until they became coherent, until the hierarchy made sense. I can't believe I didn't think of this. So I've started doing that, and fortunately, index cards are this size. So you can pay homage to Pirsig and become more organized in your writing. In parting, I want to leave you with a quote from Lila that we can chew on. Because quality is morality, make no mistake about it. They're identical. And if quality is the primary reality of the world, then that means morality is also the primary reality of the world. The world is primarily a moral order. So that will be interesting to explore. I hope that made sense, and I'll see you next time.